It started with a sentence that no billionaire was ever prepared to hear. Pick someone else, I've been returned 3 times. Those 8 words cut through Caleb Hayes like glass. The man who built empires with code and cold focus froze in front of a 6-year-old girl in a wheelchair with shiny galaxy tape wrapped around its rims. He didn't expect his first visit to a small adoption center in Queens to feel like standing at the edge of a cliff, but that was exactly where he found himself. Her brown eyes didn't look scared. They looked tired in a way no child should ever look. If this story is already touching your heart, don't scroll, stay with it. Before we go on, hit the like button if you believe every child deserves a home, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from: New York, Atlanta, Lagos, London, anywhere in the world. Now let's go back to where it really started, hours before that sentence broke him open. Caleb Hayes was 29 years old, and half of New York knew his name even if they didn't know his face. His apps were on people's phones. His company's logo flashed on screens in Times Square. Reporters called him the Ice King of Tech because he rarely smiled, never gave long interviews, and turned every meeting into numbers and charts. To most people, he looked like a man who had everything: a sleek black town car, a glass office on the top floor of a tower in Manhattan. A life where he could buy anything in seconds. But money couldn't buy back the one thing he had lost 3 years ago on a cold night in December. In the back of the car, as the driver glided through morning traffic, Caleb held his phone in his hand and stared at a picture he almost never showed anyone. It was of him and his little sister, Emily, sitting on a couch in their small old apartment way before the billions. She had paint on her cheek and was laughing at him, holding up a crooked drawing of a house with hearts for windows. He was pretending to be annoyed in the picture, but he remembered that day like it was yesterday. She had always said, "When you're rich one day, don't forget to build a house where nobody gets sent away, okay?" He had promised, then a few years later she was gone. She had been in a car crash while he was in a meeting. She had called him twice before she got on the road that night, but he had ignored the calls, thinking, "I'll call her back later." There was no later. They told him the crash wasn't his fault, but his heart never believed it. Ever since then, every success felt a little bit empty, like eating food with no taste. "Mr. Hayes, we're almost there," his driver said gently, glancing at him in the mirror. Caleb cleared his throat and pushed the picture off his screen like he was hiding a wound. "Okay, thanks, Aaron." His voice sounded steady, but his fingers were not. They kept tapping against his leg. He wasn't nervous in boardrooms. He wasn't nervous during big deals. But today, his chest felt tight in a different way. This visit had started from a small thing, just a video on his phone at 2 in the morning. He couldn't sleep that night, so he was scrolling. A short clip popped up. It showed an old building in Queens with peeling paint and a broken sign that read Sunrise Haven Adoption Center. The person in the video said the center was struggling. They showed kids sitting on worn couches, some with crutches, some in wheelchairs, some in big, oversized clothes. But it wasn't the building that stuck in his mind. It was the girl at the end of the video, a little girl in a wheelchair waving at the camera with a small, careful smile. On the front of her chair was a sticker of a galaxy like tiny stars taped together. The caption under the video read, "Some of these kids have been returned by families more than once." Returned. That word had hit him hard. He replayed the part where her chair rolled past the camera with the galaxy sticker shining at least 10 times. Something about it made his chest ache. Kids being treated like broken toys, thrown away when they were too much. The next morning, instead of going straight to his office, he called his assistant. "Find out where that adoption center in Queens is," he had said. "No press, no camera people, no big donation ceremony, just set a visit." Now here he was. The car pulled up in front of a 3-story brick building squeezed between a laundromat and a small grocery store. The sign that said Sunrise Haven leaned slightly to one side. Some of the letters were faded. There was chalk on the sidewalk, crooked hopscotch lines, and little stars drawn in different colors. For a second, Caleb just watched, his hand on the door handle, his heart beating faster than it did before any billion-dollar deal. "You sure you don't want me to come in with you?" Aaron asked. Caleb shook his head. "No, I need to do this myself." He stepped out into the cool air. The city noises felt far away here, softer. Kids' laughter floated faintly from somewhere inside the building. As he walked up the cracked steps, he wondered if they would recognize him. Part of him hoped they wouldn't. He didn't want fake smiles or shaky voices saying, "Thank you, sir," just because of his bank account. He wanted to see real things, real faces, real stories. Inside, the lobby smelled like crayons, old coffee, and lemon floor cleaner. The walls wore posters about kindness and safety, edges curling from age. A desk stood near the entrance, covered with stacks of papers and a chipped mug that said "Best Grandma" filled with pens. Behind it sat a woman with gray curls pulled back in a loose bun and glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Her name tag read Mrs. Lane. She looked up, ready to give a polite welcome to another visitor, then her eyes widened slightly when she saw his tailored coat and polished shoes. But she didn't jump up or act starstruck. She just smiled, tired but kind. "Good morning, how can I help you?" "I'm here to see Director Walters," Caleb said softly. "He's expecting me." Recognition flickered in her eyes. Maybe she had been warned someone important was coming. Still, she just nodded. "Right, yes, he told me you might stop by. Have a seat, dear, I'll let him know you're here." Caleb sat on a worn green couch by the wall. The cushion sank lower than he expected, and for some reason that little detail hit him. He could buy 100 new couches for this place without blinking, but he didn't want this visit to just be about money. Money helped, sure, but money didn't tuck kids in at night. Money didn't say "I love you" in the dark when nightmares came. Money didn't stay when things got hard. People did, or at least they were supposed to. On the other side of the room, a door stood half open. He could hear faint voices, the roll of something on wheels, and the sound of a cartoon playing. A little boy peeked out from behind the door, saw him, and hurried back inside, calling out, "There's a fancy man here," another child giggled. Director Walters appeared a moment later, wiping his hands on his trousers like he had just finished helping someone with a messy craft project. He was in his late 50s, with a kind face that looked like it had seen too much sadness but refused to give up. He wore a simple blue shirt with sleeves rolled up and a tie that looked like it had been pulled loose hours ago. "Mr. Hayes," he said, crossing the room quickly and offering his hand. "Thank you for coming. I'm Mark Walters. We're very grateful for your interest." Caleb stood and shook his hand. "Please call me Caleb." "Caleb," the director repeated like he was trying to treat him like any other visitor. "We appreciate you taking the time. Not many people see that video and show up in person." He paused. "Can I ask what brought you here, just so I know how to show you around?" Caleb hesitated. He could have said something simple. "I wanted to help. I wanted to donate," but that wasn't the truth, or at least it wasn't all of it. "I saw the video," he said quietly. "The one about your kids. There was a little girl in a wheelchair with galaxy tape on the wheels." Director Walters' face changed. His shoulders lowered slightly and his eyes grew sad and thoughtful, like Caleb had spoken a secret name. "Ah," he said slowly, "you mean Rosie." "Rosie." The name was new, but it settled against his heart as if it had always been there, waiting. "Rosie," he repeated. "Is she here?" "Yes," the director said. "She's been here a long time." He motioned for Caleb to walk with him down the hallway. "I can show you around first if you'd like, meet some of the children, or if you came for her specifically, we can talk about that too." They moved through the hallway, their steps echoing softly on the tile floor. Children's drawings covered the walls, houses, stick figure families, suns with long smiling rays. Caleb's eyes kept catching on the same theme. Almost every picture had a door opening, a door closing, a door with someone standing outside. "How many kids do you have here?" he asked. 32 at the moment," Walters replied. "Some will be placed soon, we hope. Some have been here for years, some have more complicated files." "Complicated," Caleb repeated. "Like how?" The director sighed. "Sometimes families think they're ready. They come in excited, full of big promises, then real life happens. The kids need more care than they expected. There are medical needs, emotional needs, behaviors from past trauma. The parents get tired. Some decide they can't handle it. They bring the child back." "Like returning a product," Caleb said, bitterness sharpening his words. The director's jaw tightened. "We never use that word here, not in front of the kids, but yes, that's what it feels like sometimes, for them especially." They stopped near a window that looked into a playroom. Caleb watched through the glass. A group of kids sat on the floor building towers with wooden blocks. One girl in braids lined up stuffed animals in a row. A boy in glasses held a toy car and made vroom sounds, his face serious like he was busy doing important work. Then for a second he saw it. A small blur of deep purple and blue near the back of the room. A wheelchair. The wheels glowed in spots where the sunlight hit shiny tape. Galaxy tape. He held his breath. He couldn't see her face yet. Only the top of her head, her hair pulled back into two small puffs with tiny silver clips. She was at a low table drawing something on a piece of paper. The children around her laughed at something on the TV, but she didn't look up. Her hand kept moving in careful, firm strokes, like the world inside the paper was more important than the one outside. "That's her," Director Walters said softly. "You can meet her in a minute, but before you do, there's something you should know." They stepped away from the window into a small office with a desk and 2 chairs. Walters pulled a thin file from a shelf. It wasn't very thick, but it looked heavy when he held it. He placed it on the desk and opened it, scanning a few lines with tired eyes. "Rosie Dale," he read quietly, 6 years old, came to us at 3 after an accident. Her legs don't work the way they used to. Doctors say she may never walk again. She's smart, very smart, loves space, stars, drawing, love stories, hates loud voices, closed doors, and promises that sound too big." He paused and glanced up at Caleb. "She's been placed 3 times and brought back 3 times. The words punched him harder than he expected. 3. "Yes," Walters said. "First family took her home for 6 months, said they couldn't handle the medical appointments and the cost. Second family stayed for almost a year. Then the dad lost his job and they decided they could only keep their biological child. Third family, that one hurt her the most." His voice lowered. "They told her she was too sad, that she cried too much at night. They said they wanted a child who would fit better. They brought her back and never visited again." Caleb swallowed, his throat felt dry. "She remembers all of that." "Every word," the director said. "Kids remember more than we think, especially the bad parts." He closed the file gently. "So if you want to meet her, I'm glad. She deserves every kind person who walks into her world, but I need to be honest with you. She's not like the other children who run to hug every visitor. She might test you, she might push you away. It's her way of asking, are you real or are you just another goodbye?" Caleb stared at the closed file. "I'm not here to test her," he said. If I decide to take a step toward her, I don't want to step back." "Good," Walter said. "Just remember, you're human. You're allowed to feel scared. She is too." They walked back toward the playroom. As they entered, several kids looked up. One little boy ran straight toward Caleb and bumped into his leg. "Sorry," he said, then stared up at him like he had just seen a superhero. "Whoa, you're really tall." Caleb almost smiled. "Thanks," he said, "you're pretty fast." The boy grinned and ran off again. Caleb's eyes found the wheelchair near the back. The galaxy tape on the rims glittered in the light. The girl looked up now, just for a second, as if she felt someone thinking about her. Their eyes met. It happened so fast and yet felt so slow. Her eyes were big and dark, framed by long lashes. There were faint shadows under them, like she had cried often but refused to show it now. She wore a faded t-shirt with tiny stars on it and gray sweatpants. Her shoes were small and white with worn laces, resting quietly on the footrest of her wheelchair. There was a small scar across one of her knees, visible just above the edge of her pant leg. She didn't smile, she didn't wave, she just watched him, head slightly tilted. Like she was reading a book and he was just another page. "Rosie," Walter said, his voice soft and warm. "This is Mr. Caleb, he came to visit today." She blinked once, then went back to her drawing. Her voice, when it came, was calm and flat, like she had rehearsed it 100 times. "I didn't ask him to." Caleb's heart skipped. He took a breath, moved closer, and knelt down so he was at eye level with her. Up close, he could see what she was drawing, a big house with a ramp instead of stairs and lots of windows with stick figures inside. Some figures had canes. One had a wheelchair with stars on the wheels. "You like drawing houses?" he asked gently. She shrugged without looking at him. "They always make us draw families, it's boring." "Why do you draw them if it's boring?" "Because if I don't, they think I'm not trying," she said. Then she raised her eyes to his, and that was when she said it. Clear, sharp, heavy. "Pick someone else, I've been returned 3 times." The room grew quiet around them. The cartoon on the TV kept playing, but it sounded far away. Caleb felt like the floor shifted under his knees. Kids shouldn't know words like returned in that way. Kids should know words like birthday, sleepover, home. He started, but the words stuck in his throat. Rosie tilted her head again, studying his face like she was checking for cracks. "You look like the others," she said simply. "Fancy clothes, nice smell, soft voice, they all start like that, then they go to the office and whisper, and the next thing I know, I'm back here." Director Walters opened his mouth to say something, but Caleb lifted a hand slightly, asking him silently to let him try. You're right, Caleb said quietly. I do have fancy clothes, I do smell nice. I used too much cologne this morning, actually. His mouth tugged into a tiny, nervous smile. But I didn't come here to whisper about sending you back. I came because I saw you in a video. I saw your wheelchair, the stars on it. She glanced down at the galaxy tape, then up at him, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. So, he said, I thought whoever decorated their wheels like that must like space, and stars and big, impossible things. My sister used to like those things too. His voice softened on the last words. There it was again, that invisible bruise in his heart. He never talked about Emily in public. He didn't put her name in interviews, didn't attach it to any building or scholarship. Keeping her name quiet felt like keeping it safe. But now, looking at this small girl who had been returned like a broken item on a receipt, he felt something open up inside. Where is your sister? Rosie asked, not cruelly, just directly. She passed away, he said, a few years ago. Because of you? She asked, her eyes steady. The blunt question knocked the air out of him. For a moment he saw the night again, the missed calls, the hospital room, the empty bed. I think so, he whispered, even if the doctors say it was. Rosie studied him. She didn't look away. Most adults changed the subject or said, I'm sorry, in a hurry. She didn't. Her small fingers tapped the side of her wheelchair. Did you cry? Yes, he said, a lot. Did anyone say you were too sad? He thought of boardrooms, people telling him to get back to normal, friends who stopped calling when he kept canceling plans. Yes, he said slowly, they did. Rosie leaned back slightly. For the first time her face softened, not by much, just a tiny bit. They told me that too, she said. At my last house, they said I cried too much. They said other kids didn't cry that way. They said it gave them headaches. That wasn't your fault, he said quickly. You went through a lot, you had a right to cry. She shrugged again, but the shrug looked more like a shield than a casual move. Doesn't matter, I was still returned. She looked up sharply. So if you're here to take a kid home to make yourself feel better, you should pick someone else. Somebody who doesn't wake up screaming when it rains. Somebody who doesn't need help in the bathroom. Somebody whose legs still listen when they say walk. Her words sliced him open. He realized what this really was. This wasn't rudeness. This was a test, her way of saying, will you stay even when I tell you the worst parts? Caleb took a slow breath. What if I'm not here to just feel better? He asked. What if I'm here because I'm tired of doing good from far away? I give money, I build apps, I sign checks, but I don't sit with the people I say I care about, not really. What if I don't want to be that person anymore? Rosie's eyes narrowed a little. That's a lot of what ifs, she muttered. He smiled just a little. I'm good with numbers, but I'm not very good with feelings, yet I'm trying, so maybe we can both be honest and bad at this together. I don't know everything about you, you don't know everything about me, but I'd like to learn if you'll let me. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned her drawing pad around and pushed it toward him. The house she had drawn was big, but the windows were empty now. No stick figures, just open spaces. Draw, she said. If your drawing is weird, I'll know you're fake. He blinked. You'll know I'm fake if I'm bad at drawing. Yes, she said simply. All the fake people draw perfect pictures. They make the house look like a postcard. Real people make mistakes. Something inside him almost laughed. This was the strangest test he had ever taken, but somehow it made sense in her world. He picked up a blunt-colored pencil from her table. His hand felt clumsy. He hadn't drawn anything since he was a teenager. He remembered Emily's crooked house with heart windows and tried to copy the feeling of it, not the shape. He drew a stick figure standing outside the house, then another one next to it in a wheelchair with stars on the wheels. The stick figures were different sizes and one arm was too long. The ramp looked like a bent slide. Nothing was straight. When he finished, he handed the pad back to her. This is terrible, he said softly, very real. Rosie stared at the drawing. For a moment her face gave away nothing. Then slowly one corner of her mouth tugged up into the smallest smile. It wasn't big, it wasn't wide, but it was real. It's ugly, she said, but the stars are okay. Thanks, he whispered, like she had just given him a gold medal. She looked at him again. What's your job? I build things with computers, he said. Apps, websites, tools that people use every day. "Are you rich?" she asked, like she was asking if he wanted more juice, just a simple fact. "Yes," he said, not bragging, just telling the truth. "I am." "Rich people always leave," she said, "they're busy." He swallowed. "Some do, some don't." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes burning into his. "If you adopt me," she said, her voice steady and small at the same time, "and then you leave, I will not break nicely. I will break loud. I need you to know that." His heart slammed against his ribs. No lawyer had ever said anything that clear. No contract had ever felt that heavy. "I hear you," he said. "I really do." His voice shook for the first time. "And I won't promise something I can't keep, but if I say I'll stay, I will do everything in me to stay, even when it's hard, even when you wake up crying, even when you're mad at me, even when you don't talk to me. I don't want to be another goodbye for you." Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She clenched the edge of her drawing pad instead. "Don't say you'll stay," she whispered. "Everybody says that at the start. Say something else." He froze, his throat tightened again. Say something else. What could he say that hadn't been said and broken before? His mind flashed to Emily again, her small voice telling him, "Don't build a life where people are alone." "Okay," he said slowly. "I won't say I'll stay, not yet. I'll say this instead. If you let me, I want to be the last person you ever have to test." She stared at him. 1 second, 2, 3, the air between them hummed. Behind them, Mrs. Lane walked quietly past the room, watching from the doorway. Director Walters folded his arms, eyes shining just a little, but he stayed silent, letting the moment breathe. Rosie finally spoke, her voice barely louder than a breath. "What if I fail your test?" "You can't," he said. "You don't have to pass anything for me to care about you, you just have to be Rosie." Her lips trembled. "You don't even know me." "Then let me learn you," he replied, surprising himself with how soft his tone had become. She looked away quickly, blinking fast. "I don't like it when people cry in front of me," she said. "I'm sorry," he whispered, even though he wasn't crying yet. But the truth was, he could feel something hot pressing behind his eyes, waiting. Rosie turned the drawing pad back toward herself and drew a tiny star in the corner of the page, then another and another. "If you're serious," she said, not looking at him, "you have to know a secret. All the people who took me home and brought me back, they all had the same look on their faces the day they changed. The day they decided I was too much. I never forgot that look." "What look?" he asked quietly. She finally looked at him again, her eyes were wet now. "They looked at me like I cost too much, not money, just too much everything." Her voice cracked. "If I ever see that look on your face, even one time, I will tell them to bring me back before you can." Caleb's chest hurt so much it felt like someone was squeezing his rib cage. "You won't," he said. "You won't see that look." She studied him for a long, long moment, like she was measuring his soul. Then she said something he didn't expect. "You think you're here to save me," she whispered, "but what if I'm the one who saves you?" The words hit him harder than anything she had said so far. For a second his whole mask cracked. He felt it. He felt his eyes sting, his throat burn. He turned his head slightly, but it was too late. One tear slipped out and fell onto the floor between them. Rosie watched the tear hit the tile. Her small fingers relaxed their tight grip on the armrest of her wheelchair. Director Walters took a tiny step forward, like he was ready to guide things now, but before he could speak, Caleb looked up sharply. His voice came out rough. "I want to talk about adopting her," he said. "Not someday, today. I don't want to walk out of here pretending this never happened." Walter's eyes widened. "Caleb, we can start the process, yes, but there are many steps, background checks, home studies, legal paperwork. It takes time." "I understand," Caleb said, "but I want you to know my intention. I'm not here to just donate. I'm here because I saw her and something in me woke up. I want to give her a home." Rosie's hands went still, her eyes widened just a little. "You don't even know everything about me," she said. "There's stuff in the file they didn't tell you yet, bad stuff, scary stuff, the kind of stuff that makes people change their minds." Caleb looked at Director Walters, whose expression had shifted. The director's jaw clenched and his eyes darted to the unopened part of the file still sitting on his desk across the hall. There was clearly something more in there, something heavier. Rosie sucked in a shaky breath. They said if I ever get a chance again, I should tell the truth fast before it's too late. She looked at him, and this time her eyes were full of fear, not just caution. If you really want me, you need to hear the worst part first, the thing that made one family run. The room seemed to shrink. The sounds of the other children, the cartoon, the distant phone ringing at the front desk, all of it faded. Caleb's heart pounded. What worst part? He asked quietly. Rosie swallowed hard, her small hands shaking as they gripped her wheelchair. She opened her mouth to answer, and the director stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. Caleb, he said, his eyes serious in a new way, before she tells you, there's something in her file you haven't seen yet, something that could change everything for her and for you. Caleb turned from Rosie's trembling face to the director's grave one, feeling the ground tilt again under him. For the first time since he stepped into the building, a chill ran down his spine. What's in that file, he asked slowly, that everyone else saw and decided they couldn't stay? The director hesitated, glancing at Rosie, whose eyes were now shining with tears, as if she already knew what this answer might do to him. And as the weight of that unseen page hung between them, heavier than any contract he had ever signed, Caleb realized this moment, right here, right now, would decide whether he was just another rich man with good intentions or something very different. Caleb's question hung in the quiet room like smoke, and for a moment no one answered, not the director standing stiff behind him, not the children in the corner pretending not to listen, not even Rosie, whose small shoulders had gone rigid as if she already expected pain. The air felt heavier, almost colder, as if the truth inside that file carried a weight big enough to crush a man who wasn't ready. Caleb's jaw tightened, and his chest rose and fell with slow, controlled breaths. He had solved problems that broke companies, survived boardrooms where grown men shouted like children, and rebuilt entire systems from scratch, but nothing felt as frightening as the silence that followed his question. Director Walters finally moved, but only by inches. His fingers tapped nervously against the spine of the file he hadn't yet opened, and his eyes flickered toward Rosie the way a doctor looks at a patient before delivering news that might shatter them. Caleb, he began, voice low, steady but strained. What's in here isn't something she caused, it's something that happened to her. Something that shapes the way she reacts, the way she trusts, the way she sleeps at night. And every family who read this part, they decided they weren't equipped for it. He paused, swallowing hard. Some didn't even say goodbye, they just left. Caleb felt the words hit him like cold water. Not equipped, left without goodbye. A child being punished for surviving something she didn't choose. His hands curled into fists against his knees. He glanced at Rosie, who had gone still in her chair, her eyes locked on the wheels instead of on him. Her fingers were picking at the galaxy tape, peeling tiny pieces as if trying to distract herself from the fear climbing her throat. A child shouldn't look that familiar with dread. He forced himself to speak, even though his voice came out rough. Show me. The director blinked. Are you sure? Most people ask for a summary, not. I don't want a summary, Caleb said sharply, surprising even himself. I want the truth, all of it. The room fell silent again. Children's whispers floated behind him, a soft soundtrack of tiny voices wondering what was happening. What's wrong? One kid murmured. Is she in trouble? Asked another. Rosie's grip tightened on the armrests of her chair, knuckles turning pale. She didn't look at Caleb, she didn't dare. She seemed to think that if she met his eyes, she would see the beginning of the end. Director Walters exhaled slowly, walked toward a small desk at the corner of the room, and placed the file down as though he were setting a fragile object on a scale. He flipped the cover open with careful fingers. Papers rustled. Medical forms, social worker notes, psychological evaluations, pages filled with numbers, scribbles, boxes, and cold official words that tried but failed to capture the soul of a child. Caleb's stomach twisted at the sight. When the director stopped turning pages, he rested his hand on one specific sheet. The color drained from his face. This is the page. Rosie squeezed her eyes shut, her small body trembled. Don't, she whispered. Please don't read it out loud. Caleb's heart cracked. Her voice wasn't angry this time, it was scared, truly scared. He turned to her immediately. I don't have to hear it out loud, he said gently. Not if it hurts you. He looked at the director. Let me read it myself. The director hesitated. Are you sure? Most people. Caleb didn't let him finish. I'm not most people, give me the file. For a moment, Director Walters searched his face as if checking whether he meant it not with his mouth but with his soul. Finally, slowly, he slid the folder across the desk. Caleb reached for it with hands far less steady than he expected. He sat down in the nearest chair, the one with one wobbly leg, and opened the page the director indicated. His eyes scanned the lines. And with each sentence he read, something inside him twisted tighter and tighter. His hand shook. His breath caught. His chest tightened. He closed his eyes once, trying to calm the rising storm inside him, but the words stayed burned behind his eyelids. Then he looked again, because a child deserved to be seen completely, not halfway, not filtered, not edited. The page detailed everything. The accident that paralyzed her. The house she came from before the adoption center. The neglect. The fear. The locked rooms. The nights she screamed with no one coming. The people who should have protected her. The behaviors that came from trauma, not from misbehavior. The doctor notes about night terrors. The social worker note, child expresses strong fear of abandonment, observed emotional shutdown when promising language is used. And the line that made his heart split open. Child's panic episodes include uncontrollable crying and repeated words, "Please don't bring me back." Caleb's jaw tightened until his teeth hurt. He kept reading. Then came the part the director warned him about, the part families read and walked away from. During thunder and heavy rain, child displays extreme distress, shaking, screaming, and repeating phrases related to the night of her injury. Requires gentle, sustained reassurance. Family must be emotionally steady during episodes to prevent worsening trauma reactions. Thunder. Rain. Terror. Screaming. He could picture her, tiny, fragile, shaking uncontrollably in her wheelchair while a family panicked and decided she was too much. Something hot surged inside him, anger, but not at her, never at her, anger at the world that broke her and then blamed her for it. His hand covered his mouth, pressing tightly as if trying to keep the emotion from spilling out too loudly. His eyes blurred. He blinked the tears back because he didn't want her to see fear in him, not fear of her, but fear for her. He turned the page over slowly, carefully, then closed the entire folder with hands that trembled. He looked up. Rosie still hadn't moved. She stared at the opposite wall, shoulders tight, chest rising with tiny, shallow breaths as if she was preparing herself for rejection before he even opened his mouth. Director Walter stood by the desk, silent, watching the moment unfold with the weight of someone who had seen too many families break a child without even touching them. Caleb swallowed hard. He forced his voice to work, even though it came out low and hoarse. I read everything. Rosie's fingers stopped moving. Very slowly she lifted her chin and turned her face toward him. Her eyes were wide, fragile, terrified. And do you see why they left? He felt his heart twist violently. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together to hide the shaking. Yes, he said softly, I see why they left. Her face fell. A tiny gasp escaped her lips like she'd been punched. She looked down at her lap, gripping the fabric of her pants with trembling hands. Okay, she whispered. I knew it. It's always the same. It's okay. I didn't want to go with you anyway. I didn't mean to. Stop, he said, and his voice shook with emotion so raw even the director looked startled. Rosie froze. Caleb's voice gentled, but the fierceness underneath remained. I said I see why they left, but I didn't say I would. She blinked slowly, confused, fragile hope flickering in her eyes like a candle fighting a storm. But you just said. I said they left because they weren't strong enough, he whispered, not because of anything you did. She stared at him, stunned. Caleb's eyes softened, but his voice carried something steel-like beneath the gentleness. The problem was never you, Rosie. The problem was them. They weren't ready for a child who needed more than a picture-perfect moment for Instagram. They weren't ready for a child who needed comfort during storms. They weren't ready for a child who had seen more pain than they could handle. Rosie's lips trembled. But I scream during rain, I cry a lot, I wake people up. I break things when I'm scared. I crawl out of my chair sometimes because I think the walls are closing. I mess everything up. I'm not easy. His voice cracked. You don't have to be easy to deserve love. Her chin wobbled, tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away fast as if crying might push him farther from her. Caleb leaned forward more, lowering his voice to a trembling whisper. What happened to you would break most adults, but you're still here, you still draw stars, you still smile sometimes, you still fight to wake up every day even though you're scared. Rosie, you're not too much, you're brave. Her small shoulders shook. She whispered, barely audible, but will you leave when it rains? No, he said immediately. Her voice cracked again, will you leave when I scream? No. Will you leave when I cry? No. Will you leave when I can't sleep? No. Will you leave when I can't walk? His eyes shone, never. She stared at him, breath trembling, face open and raw. Why? He swallowed hard and his voice broke. Because I'm not trying to adopt a perfect child, I'm trying to adopt you, and you are not a burden, you are a little girl who deserves someone who stays. The words hit her like something holy and terrifying at the same time. Her lips parted. Her breath hitched. Her hands moved slowly from her lap to the wheels of her chair, gripping them as if anchoring herself. You're not scared, she whispered, unbelieving. His voice softened. I'm scared, but not of you. I'm scared of failing you. I'm scared of not being enough. I'm scared because I've never done this before, but being scared doesn't mean I run away. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another. And another. She covered her face with her hands and began to cry, not the sharp, panicked crying of terror, but the slow, shaking cries of someone who hasn't been held in a long time and doesn't know how to let hope in gently. Caleb stood from the chair, but he didn't touch her immediately. He approached slowly, letting her hear his steps, letting her feel the space change so she wouldn't get startled. May I kneel beside you? He asked softly. She nodded without lifting her hands. He knelt, a billionaire in a polished coat, kneeling on a worn playroom floor beside a child whose tears soaked into the sleeves of her faded shirt. He didn't touch her yet. He just stayed. Still. Quiet. Present. Rosie's crying didn't stop quickly. It came in shaky waves, her breath catching every few seconds like her chest didn't remember how to handle something this heavy. Caleb didn't rush her. He didn't shush her. He didn't pat her back too soon or try to force comfort on her. He simply stayed kneeling beside her wheelchair, hands resting gently on his knees, letting her see at her own pace that he wasn't going anywhere. The other children in the room grew quiet, curiosity pushing them to watch from behind their toys, but even they sensed something delicate, something sacred was happening. Director Walters stood a few feet back, eyes soft, expression touched with awe and fear, because moments like this could build a child or break them again if handled wrong. Little by little, Rosie lowered her hands from her face. Her cheeks were wet, her eyelashes clumped together, and her breathing was shaky, but she didn't look away from Caleb this time. If anything, she searched his eyes for cracks, any tiny sign that he regretted kneeling there. Caleb leaned in just a little, letting her see clearly that not once did he flinch. Her tears didn't scare him, her emotions didn't irritate him, her vulnerability didn't shrink him. He looked at her like she had every right in the world to feel everything she felt. Do you really mean it? She whispered, voice small and trembling as if she feared the words might disappear before he confirmed them. Yes, Caleb replied softly, every word. Her fingers curled around the edges of her wheelchair again, gripping tightly. For a moment she looked like she wanted to believe him so badly that it hurt. Other people said things like that, she whispered. They said, we'll stay, or you're safe, or you'll never be alone again. And then they left. They left when I had bad dreams. They left when I cried at night. They left when I couldn't move fast. They left when the thunder scared me. Her voice cracked again. What if you leave too? Caleb inhaled slowly as if taking the weight of her fear into himself. I can't change what they did, he said gently, but I can show you something they didn't. What? She asked, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. He straightened his back slightly, his voice steady but tender. I can show you consistency, not promises, not perfect words, just staying again and again until you know I mean it. Her eyes watered again. But what if I make mistakes? What if I get mad? What if I scream at night? What if I push you away? I'll still stay, he said without hesitation. Her lower lip trembled, even if I don't want to talk to you sometimes. Yes. Even if I'm not pretty or perfect like other kids. Caleb's voice cracked, you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be anything except you. The tears she'd been fighting spilled again, rolling down her small cheeks in quiet streams. She turned her face slightly away, embarrassed, but Caleb gently leaned closer, keeping his voice soft. Rosie, your feelings don't scare me. She blinked in shock. They scared other people. They didn't scare me, he corrected gently. They scared people who didn't know how to love someone who needed more care. Rosie stared at him, the room reflecting in her eyes, children watching, toys scattered, sunlight coming through the old windows, director standing still, and a billionaire kneeling on the floor for a little girl nobody had chosen to stay for. Then she whispered, "Can I ask you something, but you can't get mad?" "I won't," he promised. She bit her lip nervously and lowered her voice. "Why would you want a kid who can't walk?" The question hit him so hard his heart clenched, not because of pity, but because he understood how deep the hurt behind it must be. He swallowed gently, steadying his voice. "Who told you that makes you less deserving of a family?" She looked down at her legs, which stood still and small on the footrest. Everybody. They didn't say it with words, but they said it with their faces. They said it when they sighed. They said it when they stopped carrying me down the stairs and told me to try harder. They said it when they whispered they wanted a kid who could run with them. They said it when they took me back here. They said it when... "Stop," Caleb said softly but with seriousness that made her eyes rise to his. "You don't have to repeat what they made you feel. I hear you, I hear every piece of it. But Rosie," his voice softened, breaking slightly, "your legs don't decide your worth. Your wheelchair doesn't decide your worth. Nothing that happened to you decides your worth." She blinked quickly, letting his words sink in deeper than he realized. "Then, what decides it?" He took a slow breath. "The way you feel, the way you hope, the way you dream, the way you survived things that would crush adults twice your age. You're valuable because you exist, not because you walk." Rosie stared at him with eyes slowly filling again, but this time with something softer, gentler, hope poking its head out from behind years of fear. She wiped another tear away. "But what if it rains? What if there's thunder? What if I scream and you get tired of it?" "I won't," he whispered again, firm. "I won't get tired of you." She swallowed hard, as if trying to digest a truth too big for her tiny chest. "Other people got tired." "I'm not other people," he said quietly. The simplicity of the sentence seemed to shock her. It was something her heart had never heard before, not like that, not with that softness, not with that steady certainty. A long silence settled between them, heavy but warm. Rosie's breathing steadied a little, her hands relaxed on her wheels. She opened her mouth to speak again, but a sudden soft rumble sounded through the thin roof, the rolling vibration of a truck passing by outside. Not thunder, not even close, but her small body jerked anyway, her shoulders tensing, hands clutching her armrests. Caleb saw it instantly. The director saw it. Even the children saw it. Her fear wasn't imaginary, it was real, immediate, woven into her bones. Without thinking, Caleb moved closer, not touching but making sure she saw him clearly beside her. "You're okay," he said gently, "it's just a truck outside." Rosie blinked fast, trying to settle her breathing. "I know," she whispered, "but my body still gets scared first before my brain remembers." He nodded slowly. "That's normal for what you've been through." She looked up again as if searching his face for disgust, irritation, or disappointment, any sign that this reaction changed his heart. He didn't flinch. Not even for a second. "You didn't look scared," she whispered, almost confused. "I wasn't scared of you," he said. "I was watching for what you needed." Her lips parted slowly as if she didn't understand the meaning at first. "Nobody ever said that to me." "What? What you need?" Something inside him cracked again. "Well," he whispered, "you need to hear it more and you will." Rosie's hands trembled on her wheels. "What if what I need is too much?" "It won't be too much for me." Her throat tightened. "Why?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice with emotion raw enough to make his words tremble. "Because I didn't come here to choose the easiest child. I came here because I saw a little girl with stars on her wheels who reminded me what bravery looks like." A sound escaped her lips, soft, broken, something between a sob and a breath of disbelief. She pressed her palm over her mouth as tears streamed again, but these weren't the same tears as before. These weren't fear tears, these weren't abandonment tears. These were relief tears. Slow. Gentle. A release she didn't understand yet. Caleb watched her quietly, giving her the space to cry without shame. When she finally lowered her hand, her voice came out as a tiny whisper. Can I ask something else? Anything. If you take me home one day, her breath wavered, will I have a room for me? He felt his throat tighten so hard he had to blink the tears back before answering. Yes, your own room with anything you want inside. She hesitated. Can the walls have stars? Yes, he said instantly, as many as you want. She swallowed hard. And will I have a bed, not a couch, not a blanket on the floor? His voice trembled. You will have a bed, a soft one. Her eyes filled again. Will anyone yell at me if I cry? No. Will I have to sleep in the dark? Not if you don't want to. You can have night lights, galaxy lights, whatever makes you feel safe. Her voice shook. Will you stay if I ask you not to leave my room yet? His voice cracked completely. Yes, I will stay. Rosie stared at him, tears slipping down her cheeks again. She breathed shakily, but her shoulders slowly loosened, the fear melting just enough so a tiny sliver of hope could slide through. Then she whispered something so small, so soft, that he almost didn't hear it. Can I hold your hand? Emotion punched him straight in the chest. He didn't move too fast, he didn't lunge forward, he simply lifted his hand gently, slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But she didn't. Her tiny hand reached out, shaking slightly, and he placed his larger hand inside it. Her fingers curled around his. Warm. Fragile. Trusting just a little. And in that moment, Caleb Hayes felt something shift in him, something deep and painful and beautiful breaking open after years of being locked shut. He squeezed her hand gently. She let out a trembling breath. For the first time since the conversation began. She didn't look scared. Rosie didn't let go of his hand, not even after her breathing steadied, not after she wiped her cheeks again, not even when the other children in the room whispered little questions like, is he going to adopt her? Or why is he holding her hand like that? She held on tightly, as if afraid that releasing him might make everything she'd just heard disappear like a dream that fades when morning comes. Caleb didn't pull away either. He held her small hand gently, absorbing the tremble in her fingers, the warmth of her skin, the weight of trust she was giving piece by fragile piece. He knew she wasn't healed, not even close, but this was the beginning. And sometimes beginnings looked like a 6-year-old girl gripping a stranger's hand as if it was the only solid thing in a world that had betrayed her too many times. Director Walters cleared his throat quietly, stepping a bit closer but keeping his distance, his expression soft but thoughtful. Caleb, he said gently, there's more we need to discuss. Her file is only part of it, the process it takes time and there are steps we have to follow by law. But even as he spoke, he looked between them and softened more. But for now, she's asking for you, and that's not something we see often. Rosie's head snapped toward the director, panic returning instantly. I'm not asking for him, she blurted, squeezing Caleb's hand tighter. I'm not. I didn't ask for anybody. He doesn't have to stay. Her voice was sharp and defensive, but it cracked at the edges, betraying the fear she tried to nest inside tough words. Caleb looked at her gently. It's okay, he whispered. You don't have to say what you feel out loud. You don't owe anyone that. She lowered her head again, as if embarrassed, but she didn't loosen her grip. Director Walters nodded slowly. Right, you're right. He didn't push her to speak. Instead, he took a seat on a nearby chair. Caleb, I know your intention is clear, but adoption, especially adoption involving a child with medical needs and trauma triggers, it's a major commitment. Caleb nodded, his jaw tightening. I understand. The director hesitated before continuing. We require emotional stability from any potential parent, training sessions, counseling, home studies. We look for consistency, not just emotional moments. His eyes shifted toward Rosie, then back to Caleb. And there are days when Rosie's needs may be overwhelming even for someone with the best intentions. I'm not here for intentions, Caleb said firmly. I'm here for her. The director's eyebrows lifted slightly. I know. But you should understand, there will be nights when she wakes up screaming for hours, days when she refuses to speak, days when she shakes so hard she can't hold a cup, days when she doesn't want to be touched or can't be left alone, days when you'll feel helpless because nothing you do will stop the fear. Caleb absorbed every word, his face steady, but something fierce grew in his expression. She deserves someone who stays on those days. Rosie stared at him in shock, her hand frozen in his. The director interlocked his fingers on his lap. And there will be doctor visits, physical therapy, nightmares, and possibly setbacks. Caleb didn't blink. I'm not scared of that. Most people are, the director said softly. I'm not most people, Caleb replied again. Rosie inhaled sharply at how sure he sounded. She studied him quietly, almost as if listening for the wobble in his courage, but there wasn't one. The director let out a slow breath. All right, he looked at Rosie. Do you want a break? We can continue this later. She shook her head quickly, almost anxiously. No, I'm okay. Her voice was tiny but determined. I just want to stay here. She didn't say with him, but her fingers gave her away. Caleb turned to her. Do you want to go outside for some fresh air? He asked gently. Only if you feel safe. She hesitated, chewing lightly on her thumb. The yard is quiet right now, she whispered, and the sun is out, she swallowed. Storms don't come in the morning. He nodded. Okay, if you want to. He looked at the director. Is that allowed? The director smiled weakly. Of course, there's a small playground area out back. It's not much, but the kids love the sunshine. Without letting go of Caleb's hand, Rosie reached for her wheels with her other hand, slowly turning her chair toward the hallway. But Caleb gently stopped her. May I help you? He asked softly. For a moment, she flinched, not from fear of him, but from habit. She was so used to people touching her chair without asking, rolling her too fast, pushing her without warning. She looked at him cautiously. You want to push it? Only if you agree, he said. You get to choose. Her brows furrowed as if the concept was strange. Choose for real. Yes, he said. She blinked slowly. Okay, but don't go fast. I don't like fast. I'll go your pace. A tiny nod, then yes. Gently, he placed his hands on the handles of her wheelchair, adjusting his grip slowly so she saw every move. He didn't jerk it. He didn't push suddenly. He waited for her to take a breath before guiding her toward the hallway. The children parted like a quiet river around them, watching with wide eyes as Rosie traveled across the room holding the billionaire's hand. When they reached the hallway, the sunlight from the door at the end cast warm stripes across the floor. Rosie let go of his hand, but only so she could adjust herself in her chair. She glanced back as if afraid he would walk away now that she wasn't physically holding onto him. He didn't move. She exhaled, reassured. They stepped outside into a small fenced yard with patchy grass and a couple of old swings. The sunlight was bright but gentle, warming the air. Rosie breathed deeply, her eyes softening as the light touched her face. I like the sun, she whispered. It makes everything feel not scary. Caleb stood beside her chair, hands in his pockets, watching her take in the morning. Do you come out here a lot? He asked. Sometimes, she said quietly, but I can't play like the other kids. Swings hurt my back, slides are scary, so I just watch. There was no bitterness in her words, just quiet acceptance. Acceptance that shouldn't belong to someone her age. He crouched again beside her, making sure she didn't have to look up too high. Would you like to go to a park? A bigger one with space and quiet and stars painted everywhere if you want. She looked at him, eyes widening as if he had offered her the moon itself. Stars painted on the ground. Yes, he said, or on the walls or on the sidewalk, wherever you want. Her voice trembled. Why do you keep saying wherever you want? Because it's true, he whispered. She blinked rapidly, trying to steady her breathing. Then she looked at the grass, at her hands, at anything but his face until finally she whispered, I don't know how to be picked. His heart shattered. He placed one hand lightly, carefully on the armrest of her chair, close but not touching her arm. You don't have to know. Being picked isn't something you earn, it's something someone gives you without conditions. She swallowed, but people always want something back. Not me. She hesitated before whispering, then what do you want? He didn't think, he didn't rehearse, he just said the truth. I want the chance to know you. Her eyes glistened, even the bad parts. All the parts, he whispered. She covered her face again, not crying this time, just overwhelmed. This is too much, she said into her palms. It doesn't feel real. He leaned forward. I know, and that's okay. You don't have to believe it all today. Trust takes time. She peeked at him through her fingers. You sound so sure. He exhaled a shaky breath. I'm trying to be brave for both of us. She studied him quietly, her gaze lingering on the way his voice quivered just slightly, on the way his eyes softened every time she spoke. You're different, she whispered. You're not pretending to be strong, you're actually trying. He smiled, a real trembling smile. That's all I can do. She lowered her hands completely now. Then, can I tell you something, but you can't get scared? I won't. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a small, guilty whisper. Sometimes, when I get scared, I throw things, not at people, just on the floor. I don't mean to. My brain gets loud. He nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. You're not mad, she asked, surprised. No. You don't think I'm bad? No. Her lips trembled. Do you still want me? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Her breath caught sharp, painful, disbelieving. Even if I break things, she whispered. Yes. Even if I scream. Yes. Even if I get messy. Rosie, he said softly, I want all of you, not the easy pieces. She let out a fragile, broken laugh, a sound that was mostly tears. No one has ever said that to me. You deserve to hear it sooner. She wiped her eyes again. Caleb. Yes. If you adopt me, her voice shook, would I call you Dad? The question hit him like a blow. He didn't answer right away because his throat closed, emotion pressing so hard he had to breathe through the ache. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, reverent, trembling. If you wanted to, he whispered, I would be honored. Her whole body froze. Then, without warning, something huge shifted in her eyes, fear, longing, disbelief, need, all tangled together in a way that made her chest rise in one sharp breath. Before she could say anything, before the moment could settle, a loud knock echoed through the yard door behind them. Sharp. Urgent. Director Walters stiffened. Rosie jumped violently, gripping her wheels so tight her knuckles turned white. Caleb turned toward the door. The director opened it a crack, and a staff member leaned in, her face pale. Mark, it's the family who returned Rosie last year. They're here. They want to talk to you. Rosie gasped a tiny sound of terror. Caleb's heart dropped. And instantly, everything changed. The moment the staff member said those words, the family who returned Rosie last year, they're here. The air in the yard shifted like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Rosie's breath hitched so sharply she almost choked on it. Her hand shot up to her chest, gripping her shirt like she needed to hold herself together. Her eyes went wide, full of the raw, instinctive fear of a child who had been hurt and expected hurt again. Not later, not someday, but right now. Caleb felt her trembling even from where he knelt beside her wheelchair. It was the kind of trembling born from memory, not imagination, fear rooted so deeply it shook through her bones. She looked at him instantly like a drowning child looking for the nearest hand to grab. Caleb rose in one swift motion, instinct taking over, stepping between her and the door as if protecting her was something he had always known how to do. Director Walters stiffened and stepped toward Caleb, his voice low. This wasn't planned, they showed up without calling. He shot a sharp look at the staff member. Where are they? In the lobby, she whispered. They said they want to speak to you about paperwork. Rosie gasped at that word, her small hands flying to her wheels, gripping them so tight her knuckles blanched white. Paperwork? She whispered. They want to send me somewhere again. Her voice cracked on the last word, breaking like thin glass under pressure. Caleb turned immediately, crouching down in front of her again, blocking her view of the building like a shield. No one is taking you anywhere, he said, his voice shaking with urgency. Rosie, look at me. She couldn't, her eyes darted everywhere, panic rising fast. Rosie, he whispered again, softer this time, coaxing her trembling gaze toward his. When her eyes finally met his, they were wide with terror. I won't let anything happen to you, he said firmly. Not now, not ever. She shook her head, body shaking so hard her chair vibrated. They're mad at me, she whispered. They didn't like me, they said I was too much, they said I cry too loud, they said I ruin nights, they said I made him lose his job because I needed too much, they said. Stop, Caleb said gently but firmly. You don't have to repeat what they said to hurt you, I hear you, I know what they did. Her tears came fast and quiet. "They'll want me back," she whispered. "They always do that. They take me, they bring me back, they take me again, they bring me back again. They'll say something about money or papers or a mistake, and then I go with them again." "No," Caleb whispered, gripping the armrest of her chair with steady hands. "You're not going with them." Director Walters stepped forward carefully. "Caleb, legally, they don't have rights anymore. They signed voluntary relinquishment forms months ago. They can't claim her back. They're probably here about donations or unfinished matters." Rosie didn't hear any of that logic. Fear shut her ears. She only saw the ghosts of people who once promised to love her and then threw her heart away like an old toy. She let out a soft whimper. "Please don't let them see me." "You're safe," Caleb said again, moving so close she could see nothing except his calm, steady presence. "You're safe with me." The yard door opened wider, footsteps approached. A man's voice, too familiar in tone, floated into the sunlight. "Mark, we really need to talk, it's urgent." Rosie flinched so violently that Caleb instinctively placed both hands on her wheelchair handles. She wasn't breathing right, too fast, too shallow, trapped in a panic she couldn't climb out of. "They're coming," she whispered, voice shaking violently. "Caleb, please hide me, please don't let them touch." Her words cut off when a tall man stepped into view at the door, broad shoulders, expensive jacket, hair combed too sharply, face twisted with annoyance rather than warmth. Behind him stood a woman with thin lips and arms folded, eyes scanning the yard with irritation as if she saw the place as a burden. Rosie gasped, her whole body recoiling as if she had been struck. Caleb didn't hesitate. He stepped fully in front of her wheelchair, blocking her entirely from the couple's line of sight, his stance widening into something protective and unmovable. Director Walters quickly intercepted the couple with an outstretched hand. "You were told to wait in the lobby," he said firmly. "We didn't want to." "You will wait in the lobby," Walters repeated sharply, his voice losing its usual softness. But Caleb wasn't listening to the adults anymore. He was focused only on Rosie, who was trying so hard to hold in the sob rising in her throat. Her hands covered her mouth, her eyes huge with terror, her breathing shallow and fast. She whispered into her palms, "Please don't make me go, please don't make me go, please don't." "I won't," Caleb whispered fiercely. "I'm not letting anyone take you." The man at the door peered around Walters. "Is that Rose?" "You don't say her name," Caleb snapped, his voice cutting the air like a blade. The yard fell silent. The man blinked, stunned, the woman frowned. "And who exactly are you?" Caleb turned slowly, his face a cold mask of control. "Someone who cares about her, which is more than I can say for either of you." The woman bristled. "We cared, we tried, but she was." "Don't," Caleb growled. "Don't finish that sentence unless you want me to escort you out myself." The man scoffed, but there was something uneasy in his eyes now. "Look, we're not here to start drama. We came because there was some confusion last year with the insurance paperwork. We just need signatures." "I'll take care of it," Director Walters cut in quickly, without involving her. "Fine," the man muttered, "but we were told she'd be in the building." "She is not your concern," Walters said sharply, stepping between them with a firmness Caleb had never seen from him. Finally, the director guided the couple back inside, closing the door firmly behind them. The moment the door shut, Rosie broke down completely. A small, choked scream tore from her throat, a sound not of anger but pure terror. She covered her face again, her shoulders curling inward, her entire body shaking so violently Caleb thought she might fall from her chair. He was beside her instantly. He knelt again, this time not asking for permission but positioning himself close enough that she could feel his presence like a shield. His voice dropped to a whisper, trembling with emotion. "Rosie, look at me." She shook her head wildly. "They came back," she sobbed. "They came back for me, they always come back, they'll take me again and bring me back again and then—" "No," Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. "They won't, they can't, and even if they tried they would have to go through me." Her sobs broke into smaller gasps. "You'll leave like they did, everyone leaves when stuff like this happens." He leaned in, his forehead nearly touching hers. "I'm not leaving." She sniffed hard, tears rolling down her cheeks. You say that now, but when things get hard, when I cry at night, when I scream during storms, you'll get tired like they did. I won't get tired of you, he whispered fiercely. Everyone gets tired of me, she cried, everyone. He placed a trembling hand near her armrest, close enough to be grounding, far enough to give her space. I won't, not now, not ever. She looked at him then, really looked. Her face was streaked with tears, her lips trembling, her whole expression pleading for one thing she never dared ask for before, believe me, stay. He met her gaze without flinching. You don't have to be afraid of being too much. I'm here because I want all of you, including the parts you think are too hard. Her tears slowed, but her breathing still shook. Then she whispered something that sliced him open. What if I'm broken? His heart shattered. He swallowed hard and answered with a breaking voice. You're not broken, you're hurting, and there's a big difference. She trembled, but what if I stay hurting? Then I'll stay with you while you heal, he said, for as long as it takes. Her lower lip quivered hard. Caleb took a slow breath and did something instinctive, something gentle, careful, but full of love. He reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek with the softest touch she had ever felt. She didn't pull away this time, she leaned into it just a little. Rosie, he whispered, listen to me, you will never go through something like that alone again, you will never stand in front of people who don't want you again, and you will never be returned again, not while I'm alive. Her breath hitched, why do you care so much? He blinked slowly, letting his heart answer before his mind did. Because when I saw you, I saw someone brave, someone special, someone who deserves a home, someone I want to protect. She stared at him, tears dripping onto her pants, her entire face trembling with emotion she didn't know how to hold. He whispered again, I want you, Rosie, all of you. She let out a shaky breath, do you really mean that? With everything in me. She held his gaze for several seconds, then something new entered her eyes, small, fragile, but unmistakable. Trust. She whispered, can you stay close for a bit? I'll stay as long as you want, he whispered. She reached out slowly, hand shaking, then placed her tiny palm on top of his. He squeezed her hand gently. She squeezed back. Slow breaths. Soft quiet. Then she whispered, Caleb, can you take me home one day, not today, not tomorrow, just someday? His throat tightened painfully, a tear slipped down his cheek before he could stop it. Yes, he whispered, someday I'll take you home. She closed her eyes, letting the sunlight warm her face. Can my room have stars on the walls? Yes. And can I have a night light? As many as you want. And when it rains, will you sit with me? I promise. She exhaled shakily, tears falling again, but this time softer. Then I think I want you to be my dad. The words hit him like the sun breaking through a storm, bright, overwhelming, breathtaking. He didn't speak at first because emotion closed his throat. He lowered his forehead gently to her hand, overwhelmed with love he didn't know one small child could unlock in him. Finally he whispered, I would be honored to be your dad. Her tiny fingers brushed the top of his head, then don't be late. He lifted his head, eyes wet. Late for what? For being mine. His chest cracked open. He nodded, I won't be. Director Walters opened the yard door quietly again. Caleb, if you're ready, we can start the paperwork. It's a long process, but this is the strongest connection I've ever seen here. Rosie looked at Caleb instantly, eyes wide with fear that the mention of paperwork might break the magic. He gave her a soft smile. This time the paperwork doesn't mean goodbye. Her eyes filled again, but with something new. Hope. Together they rolled inside, Caleb walking beside her, one hand on her wheelchair, the other holding her small, trembling hand. As they entered the building, Rosie whispered, Caleb. Yes. Wherever you go, can I go? His voice cracked, yes, always. She looked up at him with a small, fragile smile. Then I think I'm not scared anymore. And as they moved down the hallway together, step and wheel side by side, something beautiful, something healing, something forever began. If this story touched your heart, hit like and subscribe to support our growth. More life-changing stories are coming. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments.